one of us. Google gobble, one of us. We accept that one of us. Google gobble, one of us. We accept that one of us. Google gobble.
Let's break down the civics available to Hive Minds. We'll start right at the bottom. This is the worst of the worst. Things that I would consider not just bad choices, but they're actively going to hinder you. So, first off here, Strength of Legions. What does it do? Well, plus 20% army damage, minus 20% army upkeep. Why is this complete garbage? Well, basically, you're not really going to need it. Yes, that extra 20% army damage bonus is something, and a little bit of reduced army upkeep is something, but ground combat in Stellaris, if you've seen any of my videos, you know it's a little bit limiting, and you don't really necessarily need massive armies at all times, and that's why it deserves its place down here in the F tier. And next we have Idyllic Bloom. This one cannot be added or removed after the start of the game. It is locked. What does it do? Well, it allows you to construct and upgrade Gaia Cedar buildings, which on the surface would sound quite good. They eventually allow you to convert planets into Gaia worlds without needing the Ascension perk and without needing terraforming technology. Gaia worlds give some great bonuses. First off, they get plus 10% to biological pop happiness, and you get plus 10% resource output. And finally, somewhat most importantly, all pops have 100% habitability on Gaia worlds. The Gaia Cedar building itself has 4 phases. Each phase costs 1500 energy credits and in increments of 50 exotic gases. It also has an upkeep of 20 energy credits, which is definitely not cheap, and as you upgrade the building it will start getting an exotic gas upkeep. What are the main problems here though? Well, the first thing is that the only type of planet that you can build this building on is one ideal to your species. So if you started with arid world preference, that means you can only build this on arid worlds. In the early game, you will have a few planets to build this on, but as you expand out, you are going to have to first terraform other planets into your ideal world type, and then begin building this building in order to get to Gaia World. On top of that, the Civic itself is actually locked, and you cannot remove it after the start of the game. It becomes worse as the game goes on, and honestly, outside of roleplay, it's probably better to go for the Ascension perk if you're desperate for Gaia Worlds, but even then, I wouldn't really recommend that. Now, taking a step out of the F tier and a little bit closer to the light, we are entering the C tier. These civics are pretty not great, but they do have some upside, some potential in them. What do we have? Divided Attention gives you plus 20% administrative capacity. At the start of the game, that's going to be a little bit crap. It's basically going to give you no bonus at all. As the game goes on though and you start filling up that Empire Sprawl, administrative capacity bonuses like this can be useful and important, as it means you won't need to have as many drones working as synapse drones. It's also important to notice that your capitals will be giving you synapse drones, so they will be providing a job which boosts your administrative capacity, and thus divided attention isn't really very necessary. And if you've been enjoying this video, please subsume that like button. Pooled Knowledge gives you plus 1 leader level cap, plus 10% leader experience gain, and plus 1 encryption. The encryption is nice but not very relevant. The problem with the leader level cap and leader experience gain is that your drones and your leaders are, to all intents and purposes, regular biological pops. They will age, they will die. So this has all of the problems that you encounter with increased leader level cap and increased experience gain for biological empires. You don't want to be getting it from your traits or civics. You want to be using the vast array of sources in the game to boost these items. Therefore, don't go with Pooled Knowledge. Catalytic Processing allows you to replace some of your Foundry drone jobs with catalytic drone jobs. What they do is they use food as upkeep to produce alloys rather than minerals. The problem from a Hive Mind perspective is you are still going to need minerals no matter what happens. in order to build buildings and the upkeep for your researchers. And then the catalytic drone jobs have a lower efficiency in terms of how many resources they need. They require more food than the normal version requires minerals. On top of that, you really don't want to be tying your food production into your alloy production like this because of the reduced efficiency. Really, it's not something I can recommend. Now we get to the B tier. Some of these are definitely useful and worthwhile, though it depends on the situation and the context your empire finds itself in. Some of the civics in the B tier are really good to start the game with and become worse over time, whereas others are not so great to start the game with but can be very useful as a third civic to include in your empire when you upgrade your government. First off, we have Natural Neural Network. This gives you +1 research alternatives, and then your unemployed pops, your unemployed drones, will produce 3.5 research in total. That's alright, but the main reason you'll take this is for that +1 research alternatives, which right at the start of the game is very, very powerful. Increasing your research alternatives at the start of the game will allow you to beeline for specific text that you need and ignore other text that you don't need. Though as the game goes on, you will find other ways of getting extra research alternatives, making this civic pale over time, and you may indeed actually want to replace it with something a little more valuable. One Mind increases your monthly unity by 15%, and in addition, your leaders are much less likely to gain negative traits. Now, it is somewhat difficult for Hive Minds to generate unity. They don't have trade value at their disposal, they can't mess around with wacky things like that, so unity generation can be very difficult for Hive Minds. Getting a 15% bonus to that output can and is very useful. Do you agree with this list so far? Is there anything you think is completely wrong? Don't forget, this is just my opinion, but please tell me your opinion. Let me know what you think right down in the comments below. For the first few hours after this video goes live, I will try to read and respond to all of your comments, guys, so please get writing. Subsumed Will comes in two parts. First off, you get a -20% Empire Sprawl from Pops, and secondly, you get no influence cost for Pop resettlements except when you abandon a colony. The first bit there is pretty garbage. That will improve over time as you get more and more Pops in your empire, so the Empire Sprawl from those Pops goes up, but at the start of the game it's irrelevant, and for most of the game it will be pretty irrelevant. On the other hand, the ability to resettle Pops with no influence cost, and this is important too because you may want to be resettling conquered biological Pops to a single planet somewhere or a variety of planets when those Pops don't have the Hive Mind trait, and you will be purging them slowly over time, probably to gain some income from them. But having no influence cost for resettlement is a massive bonus in the mid game and gets even better in the late game, though if you're not a fan of resettlement and you don't like microing that, this civic is probably not one for you. Empath. What does that do? Well, it gives us +2 available envoys and +10% diplomatic weight in the galactic community. In addition to that, we get a +20 opinion modifier with individualist empires, that is empires which are not Hive Minds. What's good about this? Well, this is one of the few ways that we can get our hands on extra envoys, and that is quite useful for a variety of different roles. The +20 opinion to individualist empires is also quite useful in single player games, but without that in there, I might actually move this down to C tier, as some of it is a little niche. If you're not interested in the galactic community and you don't want to do any spying, it's a bit rubbish. So this is definitely near the bottom of the B tier. Memorialists allows us to construct sanctuaries of repose buildings. What do? Well, they give us access to chronicle drone jobs. Chronicle drone jobs increase the planetary stability by +2.5. They also generate some society research, and very usefully, they also make unity, about 4 unity in fact. This means that chronicle drones are some of the best ways for biological Hive Mind empires to generate unity. Also, that stability bonus is not something to be sniffed at. As a hive mind, we don't have happiness. One of the only ways to really boost our stability is to have a positive buff of amenities, and therefore with quite a glut of amenities we can push our stability up. That does require though a lot of maintenance drones, and we really want to be minimizing the number of maintenance drones we have, barely breaking even on amenities, if not going a little bit into the negative. With Chronicle drones, with Memorialist, we can push up our stability without having to push and spend lots of pops on maintenance drone jobs. And that's why I think this is actually a really fantastic Civic. It gives us stability, which is going to boost our outputs, and it gives us access to Unity. I'm almost tempted to put this into the A tier, but I didn't, and that's because we've got some even better things that I think deserve their place in A tier. And I'd like to take a moment here to talk about our sponsors. Before you run away, no, I'm not about to pitch a mobile game to you, don't worry. I'm actually talking about the channel members and patrons of this channel. Thank you very much for your support. It really does make a difference. And if you would like to join this channel or support it, there is a link to Patreon down in the description of this video, or you can click the join button somewhere on your screen. Now we get to the A tier. These Civics are really quite good, very powerful. What have we got here? Well, first off, we have Subspace EFAPS. This Civic increases our naval capacity by 15% and gives us 20% bonus to our sublight speed. The increase in naval capacity is very nice, and as the game goes on and you increase your naval capacity, this 15% is going to end up being quite a large number. At the start of the game it's only going to represent 3 naval capacity, but in the mid to late game it can represent literally hundreds of extra naval capacity. But the real true bonus here is that sublight speed. There are very few ways of increasing your sublight speed. In combat, in the tactical situation of Stellaris, sublight speed can be crucial to victory. If you are able to outmaneuver your enemy, you will be able to pick the engagements, meaning a smaller force of yours should be able to defeat a larger opposing force as long as you set everything up correctly. Of course, there are some situations where it's simply not going to be helpful. If there is one way in and one way out of your space and they come in with a Death Star blob, 20% sublight speed isn't really going to help. But overall, I just think this bonus is really, really good, especially when coupled with the naval capacity increase. And then we have Terravor. This Civic cannot be added or removed after the start of the game. It gives us plus 25% ship hull points, plus 0.5% daily hull and armor regeneration, which is equivalent to the Engineer Admiral. That's really very, very good. Minus 50% Starbase influence cost, plus 40% army damage, plus 20% biology research speed, minus 25% ship cost, which is really good, and plus 33% naval capacity. Absolutely wild. What are the downsides? Well, we cannot terraform planets and we can't engage in diplomacy. We also get the can use consume world decision. This all sounds fantastic. Why is it not in the S tier? Well, you must be a lithoid in order to take this, and the downsides of being a lithoid as a hive mind massively outweigh the positives of this Terravor. That's why it's not in the S tier. Yes, it's really good, and if you're going to play a lithoid hive mind, you might as well go this way. But the main bonus that hive minds have is their massive pop growth and pop production. By being a lithoid, you are slashing that by minus 25%. It's not something you want to be going and doing, really. In order to play as a hive mind, you will need to buy the Utopia DLC. Of course, you should probably buy these DLCs when they are on sale, but if you do want to buy this DLC or any other game, you can go to Humble Bundle to purchase them. Now that will both support charity, and if you use the link in the description, you'll also be supporting this channel. Alright, now we get to the creme de la creme, the best of the best. These Civics can basically be an auto include. At least one of them is for sure something you'll want to take with every hive mind run. And what do we have? Ascetic. This is basically an auto-include for every single biological hive mind empire. If you don't have it, you're just choosing to play on a little bit of a higher difficulty level. What does it give you? Plus 5% habitability, which is nice, and then also minus 15% pop amenities usage. That means we are going to need many fewer drones in the maintenance drone role, which is really going to be a crutch for our empire, in that we are going to be having, yes, lots and lots of extra pops as a biological hive mind, but so many of them are going to be pushed into that maintenance drone role that it can become burdensome. But this is going to do away with that to some extent. And given that it's only a single Civic, it's a no-brainer to include it. The habitability as well, that is pretty useful. That is going to mean that we have some extra habitability on all worlds, given that it's going to be quite a while before we are able to edit the habitability preference of our species, and we only have one primary species. We cannot go out and conquer other species except for other hive minds, other species, and incorporate them in our empire. So this habitability is definitely useful. But what can I say? If you're not including this, you've probably gone a little bit mad. Devouring Swarm has all of the benefits of Terravore. You're going to be getting that plus 25% ship hull points, plus 0.5% daily hull and armor regen, minus 50% starbase influence cost, all that army damage, biology research speed, reduced ship cost, and increased naval capacity, along with the total war goals. But you don't have to be a lithoid, meaning you could pair this, for instance, with Ascetic and go out and simply eat up the rest of the universe. It's going to be nice and easy for you. You can go on the aggressive and simply destroy everything in your path. Devouring Swarm is one of the best civics in the game. It gives you some of the best bonuses, that naval capacity, the ship cost, the daily hull regen, the ship hull points, and the influence reduction for star bases. Absolutely wild. And then when you go out and conquer other empires, well, you can probably munch on their population. As the game goes on as well, you won't need to go and munch on them necessarily. You might want to convert them into hive mind pops and incorporate them in our collective. The traits you assign to your drones can be just as important as the civics. If you'd like a breakdown of which traits are great and which traits are garbage, click the video on screen now.